Hi everyone. Data lakehouses and open table formats have turned out to be amongst the hottest topics in 2024. I recorded a few episodes of the It Depends podcast right after I was exposed to all the new developments that were going on at the Databricks Data and AI Summit and before that at Snowflake Summit. I had the honor and opportunity to talk to people from Microsoft, from One House, but today I get to talk to two of my favorite people, probably the most talented people I know in the data space. And they
Whoa.
are Doron Porat and Liran Yogev. Not only do they know data very well, they're very funny. They've got tons of jokes.
There's a lot of expectations to live up to right now. I
But
don't see that.
listen,
But yes.
no, you will see you are in for a treat. I have, how long have we talked about doing this podcast? 2 years. Confluent,
Oh.
current,
At least two
Yeah,
years.
at
least two
least two
years.
years.
I've been dreaming about this moment for 5 years, I guess. But we've been talking
Yes,
about this for two
Yeah.
years.
Even before
Yeah.
we knew him, we just
correct.
knew this will happen at some point.
Yes. But by the way, let's get into some introductions because I know you both have rich background. You're also very active in the data community. So Doron, let's start with you.
Sure. So I'm Doron Porat. I've been in data since ever, basically. I guess like my professional personality is built around data. I started in the army. We're Israeli based, so we do data in the army. And then I've done analytics, building data warehouses for different startup companies for a few years. Past 8 years, I spent at a company called Yotpo in the e-commerce domain, where I led data engineering, data infra, platform engineering teams. And for the past few months, I've started well, I also have a podcast, but I
Yeah.
started a startup company called Lakeway together with Liran and a third co-founder, Ofer Shemesh, who's not on the call. And we're building a new product around data infrastructure. So that's me.
Which I've been told is super secret at this
Oh
point.
It's
yes.
super stealthy, yeah.
Super
Yes,
stealthy.
and we don't
Um,
want to talk about it, but very
we will not.
intrigued.
We will not talk about it.
Vaguely.
I didn't know you were allowed to mention the name even. That's like. But yeah, that's fine. It's called
It's
Lakeway.
an Easter
Yeah,
egg.
it's an Easter egg.
Easter egg. Okay, so at least people know the name is coming.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and Liron, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Liran Yogev. So my story kind of like intertwines with Doron at some point, but in the beginning I was more in backend engineering, full stack, and I moved to the data world around about 8 years ago at Yotpo and managed platform engineering teams there. So everything around data, backend, front end, and then I
Mhm.
moved to ZipRecruiter and also managed the platform engineering teams as well. So around anything around infrastructure of data, machine learning, and some experimentation product that we built in house. And we host a podcast together, and we started a startup together, and it said data is everywhere for us in our life. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That is amazing. I remember we got introduced when you were at Yotpo, and I remember some years ago I was reading Bessemer's 100 top cloud companies. The only company mentioned was Yotpo in Asia, which was quite surprising to me. So, what is Yotpo? Before we get into and what was the infrastructure, data infrastructure at Yotpo?
Well, in Yapo, we built a data lake centric infrastructure.
Yeah, we were doing Lakehouse before it was called Lakehouse, like a long time before that.
Yeah, actually thinking about like a lot of the things that we were coping with. I mean, 5, 6, and 7 years ago are things that people are actually
Yeah,
like coping with now.
yeah, we're
Um,
like probably the most early adopters of Apache Hudi,
of
uh,
Databricks in Israel,
of Databricks in
one
Israel,
of the
Databricks
first
in
customers.
general, all Spark versions, like everything. Yeah, so go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so we built it basically like the open data platform. I once wrote a blog post about it, but we were really excited about like the modern data platform
Hmm.
architecture. We're building a lot of stuff in house, a lot of open source, but along with time, this is what happens when you spend 8 years at the same company.
Yeah.
Then you mature together with the data infrastructure and the company itself. So we started highly concentrated on open source and building ourselves. And as time passed by, we started to buy more. But I think all throughout history of data management in Yotpo, we were really focused about keeping it open and scalable and dynamic.
So the question I have is, you've been on this lakehouse journey for so many years. Why is it that now all of a sudden we see this rise of these open table formats? So what prompted it? Why is it such a hot topic right now?
So I think what really changed is that it's way more convenient right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like we used to have this amazing team full of really smart people doing
Mm.
like a lot of connecting a lot of different systems that are very, very complicated to understand. These open source project and everything was very buggy. Like just talking about like CDC, for example, which is now a solved problem. Like people are doing that like all the time. We're doing that with Debezium, which was so buggy at the time. We had to build tons of infrastructure around it. So this was fitting this lakehouse kind of like infrastructure is more for either very advanced team or really big teams. So we're seeing that doing at Facebook and Google and Airbnb. So these companies are actually able to pull it off. But now it's simple. Like Apache Iceberg, Delta Lake are simple. These are proven technologies that have been working on that for years to kind of improve everything about that. The compute engine, so Databricks is such a full-fledged solution that includes so many things that were not even there. We're looking at catalogs right now, which have changed so much. So everything was just so complicated, and no one really wanted to like buy into that. They were like, "Oh, Snowflake is super easy. Like just like I'm click, and I'm in." And now, oh, so Lakehouse is super easy. I can do that, and you get all the freedom of a Lakehouse, but now at the convenience of kind of like something like Snowflake that's just like click. So yeah.
I think also what happened is basically having like huge companies like Databricks and Snowflake adopting OTFs. This really helped push
Adopting what?
open table formats. Sorry.
Open table formats.
Yeah, so I think that really helped the rest of the data community also take part of what is supposed to be basically a commodity when working in a data lake centric infrastructure, because what the open table formats bring basically these are very basic things that you would expect from a data platform. The ability to upsert data, the ability to move in time. These are things that you get out of the box using a database. But those are still very hard to achieve if you don't have the right people to do it, like Liran said. But with Databricks, for example, it's so easy to start working with Delta Lake that you're not really exposed to the actual management of what it means to manage an open table format-based data lake. Before that, you had to like manage all this open source by yourself and have the smart engineers, and it was very difficult. I think it's still very difficult for people outside of these spaces, not using Databricks. And even Snowflake, we see only people starting to realize the potential around this and starting to gaze like outside of the storage layer inside Snowflake. So basically, it's funny, we started this so many years ago. I think it was 2017, 2018. Started working with Hudi, I think.
Yeah, that might be later than probably, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe 17 or 18, and now we see that the world is only like opening their eyes and starting to look at this. Like we're actually at the beginning of this curve, and that this is amazing.
Yeah, I want to add also that, by the way, not just closed source are like improving. Like open source is much better right now. Like Hudi at the time was like so many knobs and things that you had to configure and understand, and Iceberg and Delta even more. Like it's so easy and plug and play. It just works in a lot of cases. And open source projects right now are actually helping ingestion and compaction process. You have like Amora, which is a really interesting project. You have all these catalogs that are right now taking kind of like doing that for you. So I think what we're going to see right now is also the open source community kind of like making it easy as well. And just all the abstraction will just be created for everyone. And it will just be something that, just as Doron said, like just something behind the scene. You don't have to think about it. Just like you don't have to think about disks when you work with a proper database.
So I have a lot of questions about catalogs, because the center of gravity seems to be shifting to metadata. But before we even go there, I have a burning question. So I told you, we saw each other at the Databricks Summit. So after these two summits, I recorded, I did my own podcast on this. I wrote some blogs on each one. But the question that everybody keeps asking me, and I'm going to ask you because I keep punting it, which one is better now, or which one should I pick? And the reason when you answer this, there's the obvious ones. For data warehouse, pick Snowflake, but for machine learning, pick Databricks. We know that. But you both are practitioners. You get your hands dirty working on these platforms. So how do you see these two platforms are different?
So can I start?
You can go first.
Yeah, I go for. I was just going to start because Doron has so much to say about this. But I'll say. By the way, first, Mother Duck. That's the one I would choose. No, I'm sorry. By the way, another
Big
great.
Data is dead, right?
It's really yes. Big Data is dead. No, that's actually a really interesting company you should look out for. But I think a few months ago, I would have answered for most people Snowflake. I think they were like, from my personal experience, that was always the most like full solution in a way. It was just working. And there were so many things that were just working. It was so easy to use it. And yeah, it's expensive, but it kind of like it delivers. And we were using it at Yotpo as well, alongside Databricks. I think the last couple of months, and we've both tried like these new versions of everything that Databricks is bringing out in the last couple of months, and things have really changed. This is a really good platform right now. Things are just working out of the box, and serverless is working.
You're talking about Databricks now.
Databricks, yeah. And all the ML features are just amazing. So many helpers around that kind of like helps you create SQLs or generate things or even now create dashboards. So it looks like for me, a more advanced platform with much more freedom behind the scenes. And I love the pace that they're moving in. So like if I would have to bet right now at this point in time, like I would bet on Databricks for a multiple of reasons. But one of them is just like I see how fast they move. I see that their direction is really well with Unity Catalog, with all the tools that they're building around it. And they're doing a really good job engineering-wise. And this was really not the case before. Like we were using Databricks for many years. It was not a great product. Things were broken, new features coming out and just not working. Spark was always behind the scenes. You felt like Spark is behind. You felt like everything is very slow. It doesn't feel like that anymore. Spark is really fast. Serverless comes out in 4 seconds. You get like a full SQL very fast. Like we've been testing it alongside like Snowflake. It's not even that different anymore. Like so, things are working, and that's
I'll give it another answer.
Yeah.
A different answer.
we're not always in agreement. Yes.
I'm gonna make it easier for everyone. I honestly think it doesn't matter. I think the only thing that bothered me about Snowflake is about it being closed. And like back in Yotpo, we were using both Snowflake and Databricks for different reasons, which now I believe are not relevant anymore. Those were the reasons that we started off having both because we didn't think we would get the same performance from Databricks as we would from Snowflake. Now things are different, as Liran said. But basically, I think both platforms are really good. And now that Snowflake is much more open towards the open storage, meaning we can have our storage laid out in S3, for example, and still access it from Snowflake. The data is ours. We can manage it through Iceberg. I think they're just as good. I think they're amazing. Each have like these amazing features, and basically they're catching up with each other. Both are amazing companies. I think you shouldn't break your heads over which one you should use or take. But I actually have a genuine thought about like the enormous number of companies that utilize both Databricks and Snowflake, speaking from the point of view that someone that has used both in the same company. I kind of feel like that's a mistake because I see that, first of all, in terms of capabilities, they're really catching up on each other. And because each of them offers such a rich ecosystem and so many capabilities around each of these data platforms, when you utilize both, you're basically missing out because you don't have this like single source of truth, and you focus either on one of them or none of them, and I think that's a lose for companies.
Can I add to that?
If Sanjeev lets you, then yes.
Yeah, it's okay.
Can you add to my?
So I think it's kind of like what I love about this is like as long as the storage is kind of the same and you're able to keep your data at the same place and allow both systems to access it, I don't think it's actually a mistake, Doron. I think it's really great that people can have their own flavors. It's different products. Like it's not the same products. Like they have different ways of interacting with the user, different ways of like even performance is different in some use cases, and even the UI is different. And the fact that each team can choose their flavor and kind of like machine learning engineers or like machine learning data scientists really love Databricks for a lot of reasons. Why not have them use that and data engineers use Snowflake? That's great for me. As long as you have data centralized, you have a single catalog or something syncing your catalogs in a good way, which some products can do for you.
That's the problem. We're not there yet. Like data interoperability is something that everyone is talking about, but we're not there yet.
And we're also not there yet with Snowflake being so open storage. So I think, but I'm just gonna kind of
we will.
so both will happen.
I was going to.
Yeah.
I was going to bring it up, like Unity catalog is supposed to be open source, but it's not really open source. It's only a tiny portion. But before we go there, I just want to finish off this discussion we're having between Databricks and Snowflake. So what I'm hearing from both of you is that although they come from different angles and they have their own things that they do really well or not so well, but technologically, Doron, to your point, it doesn't really matter because they both are converging on the feature set, which then brings me to this question of cost. Snowflake has always been known for being expensive. Databricks actually, it's not apples to apples because Databricks cost was only Databricks and you never saw the cloud cost. But now with serverless, you do. So now the question that begs is Databricks going to be at par with Snowflake when it comes to cost?
Yeah, list price now is the same. They are roughly they're roughly with using serverless. No, there's some discount. That's a complete lie.
Be careful from discounts. They are temporary.
Yeah, yes.
Be careful.
Yeah, they're saying that everywhere. Like they're getting discounts, I think, until December 2024 on serverless.
So 50%. And then you love the product and you use it very intensively, and then it's gone. And
they've done the same with Photon when they
do not use Photon.
Yeah. No, now you have to. It's part of the serverless. So, anyways, without that discount, they're practically the same price. You just can compare that.
See, this is,
I think,
important to know, right, for people, because this whole narrative that Snowflake is expensive and Databricks is cheap has gone away. Now
it's not.
Many people still say that Snowflake is like the more expensive solution.
I don't, as a Snowflake and Databricks user, do you feel that?
No, I'm not sure whether things have changed or not. I think now it's becoming like the word out in the community is that Snowflake is more expensive. I'm not sure. Like I had a very, like you said, Sanjeev, working with Databricks, you have to bring together your cloud cost together with your platform costs, and it aggregates to a lot, and then you see it's actually comparable to what Snowflake costs, but I haven't really compared it.
There were, I think, before serverless at Databricks, and people that are still using kind of like, and I think most people are still using the non-serverless version or the all-purpose compute. You had a lot more optimization options and kind of like had more control around costs. So that, I think, what kept people kind of like happy is that they can use, they have like these machines like that you can keep like warm, and they're like, you don't pay for them like Databricks wise. You could share like workloads between different teams. You have like different optimization products out there that can kind of like help like reuse the things or kind of like have better auto scaling features. So there are more things with Snowflake. It's very kind of like there's not a lot to do.
And Databricks are going like exactly the same. Actually, like once Databricks goes all serverless, that's when we will be able to see like the actual difference between those two products once prices like stay stable and something that we know where they're going. But basically, until it's serverless, there are so many parameters to take into account. Which machines you're choosing, what's your auto scaling policies, and it's different than what Snowflake gives you. So
even around, by the way, around Spark itself, like there's so many things you can do around memory and
configurations,
and cores and everything. You can't do any of that in Snowflake. It's not even possible.
Right.
But it's not even possible in serverless.
Even with Databricks serverless, you still have a lot of choices to make. Is that okay?
So Databricks serverless is exactly like Snowflake. You get to choose the size of the cluster, and that's it. I think they're probably going to remove that as well. Like I've been trying their all-purpose serverless.
Like for it to be serverless for real.
Yes.
Where you don't choose your cluster.
Something like BigQuery. Yeah. So I think that they're actual serverless. I think they're going that way. Like
Snowflake should too. It's annoying. The warehouse concept is annoying.
It's really stupid. Yeah. And by the way, we've seen products that really improve on that with Snowflake. So able to kind of like choose different cluster warehouse sizes based on the usage patterns, and these can save like 40 to 50% of your cost just by doing that. So I don't think that's going to stay the same with Snowflake and Databricks.
So this is so interesting because cost is no longer differentiation, ease of use is no longer differentiation. A lot of technology doesn't really matter, architecture, because business users shouldn't really care about how they're different, but they do care about open source versus proprietary. They care about data interoperability. So let's talk about the metadata catalog. Are you using Polaris? So Polaris was only announced in June of this year, And then Snowflake said in 90 days, we will have it open source, but
They
in
were late.
60 days, it came out. Although, granted, it's a very first version, it's not complete. Unity catalog's been around, and then Unity catalog became open source. But then if we look at GitHub, it's not truly open source, it's only a tiny fraction of it. So what's going on in the space of catalogs?
First of all, I want to say that the moment that Matei
Yeah.
pushed the button
I love
on that
that.
stage, that was like a rock star moment for
Yes.
data. It was amazing. I
love
was
that.
so happy to be in the crowd.
Like I want to do that at some point in my life. Like that's a dream.
So
That's a
now,
dream
now
for-
give the serious answer.
Yes, that was
It
masterstroke.
was
Yeah.
amazing.
That
It
was
very
really
cool.
good. I think this is really the beginning. Okay, so historically, all we had was Hive, right? That's all we had. That's
Boo.
boo, right? That was a boo moment for it. And I think we've been talking so many years about why is no one creating an alternative for Hive Metastore, which has been here for so long. And it's really, really a bad, like it's not an interesting product. It was so simple, but no one did it. And
Hive
then
Metastore, you mean?
it created a new type of metastore. No one did. No one thought like it's possible or thought it was interesting. And then Databricks actually did because they created like internally their Unity catalog. And then it was like, oh wait, so a metastore can do all these other things. It doesn't have just to keep you the table name and the schema with a very, very bad way and some comments. And you can do so many things when you have the metadata in place. And so they kind of like, I think, propelled the imagination around what you can do with a metastore. So I think they created a really great closed source product behind the scenes. And now they are open sourcing it again because I think people feared that they've been vendor locking when they're using Unity catalog. So they get all these amazing features, but in a way they're like, wait, so now I'm stuck with Databricks forever. So they're open sourcing it. I believe that this project will kind of like be successful. But looking at Delta Lake, which is another open source project they haven't done a really great job with that. They started off like with just like open sourcing parts of it, and then they made it like more open source. Like, so I don't know what path they're going to take. I hope they learn from the past and they're going to.
It looks like they have.
It looks like they have, but it's still, as you said, it's not a full product. Like they have so much work that they need to pull from their closed source version inside the open source. I don't even know if they're going to pull everything off. Polaris is like really new for Snowflake. They've never had an open source project. I don't even know, like they don't have the practices. They don't have like understanding of how community works. The culture, yes. But I think it started off really nice. Like we have an engineer at Lakeway that already tried both. He said it was really interesting. Like their role-based access, it looks really good, by the way, which is missing right now in the Unity open source. So it's really interesting to see that these words. I would imagine there's going to be another one that's really going to be a really open source version of all of those, and it's going to be something from the community driven. We've seen some projects coming out, so it's going to be interesting to see where things will settle. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question around.
Yeah, no, that's great. Doron, what's your take?
No, I don't think I have like anything major to add. I just think it's so interesting to think of how many things have actually changed for the past 6 months. Like this has been like data on turbo, right? It's amazing to see open table formats and how things started like shifting ways with Databricks acquiring Tabular and everything going on with these catalogs. And by the way, I think that the whole data governance like industry is basically shifting around this because while a lot of things have changed behind, something kind of stayed in place for data governance. And I think that these new catalogs, and specifically looking at what Unity, like Databricks did with Unity closed source, that approach of like understanding that basically you collect data from all of the different layers, and then you can build different applications on top of it. And this is like the big picture of data governance. This is a very fresh and interesting approach. Whereas today, this landscape is very, very fragmented, built out of many different products with many, many different overlaps, which makes it very hard for consumers or the data leaders to actually like pick and manage this stack. So this is also going in a very, very interesting direction, I think. And basically, the Databricks are the thought leaders.
My spies tell me that Unity catalog does not work.
Oh, like the open source?
Not just in general, it's got limitations. So they end up using Hive a lot. Actual client projects, they're using Hive, a combination of Hive and Unity because Unity is not there yet.
For me, I can say that I tried starting working with Unity very early on. I was still working at Yotpo because we had a lot of trouble with performance issues, actually, with Hive Metastore. We really wanted to adopt Unity catalog, but we had two problems. One problem is that it wasn't available for a external engines inside of Databricks, which is a problem for multi-engine companies. It's not good enough. Second was that we realized pretty late, like during that process, that it's not supporting like plain Parquet files. Like you can't work with Parquet files without Delta on top of them. So those things were already solved naturally. But I think that it's a new product. It's a new product. It's going to take time, but I have faith in them that they're going to to make it work. Like I'm sure it's still buggy and a lot of things don't work. But
I think if you are kind of like drinking the Kool-Aid, is that something?
Drinking the what?
The Kool-Aid, isn't it like this? I'm not American, but I think it's a phrase, right?
It is a phrase, yes.
It is a phrase. Okay.
Drinking the Kool-Aid from a fire hose.
Oh, okay. All right. So something like that.
I'll look it up.
So you're gonna go all in with Databricks basically, and using Delta Lake and using all the different features. It works, and we've seen companies using it, and we've talked with like a lot of companies in the recent months, and people are using it and love it. I think one of the things that doesn't work, for example, is Iceberg support. So it's really not interoperable right now. You cannot use Unity properly with Iceberg. You can use their weird Delta Iceberg uniform thing, which is very weird. If you want to use, so in a way, it's not like you still have to use Glue or Hive when you want to kind of like create that full interoperability right now. But since they bought Tabular and all those amazing people, Ryan Blue and team, they're going to fix this in no time. Like in a couple of months, I don't think that's going to be a problem anymore. I think
I expected for something to be out by now.
Yeah,
by the way.
they're very
but
He's probably so rich right now. He doesn't care anymore.
But is the compatibility going to be at read level only or read and write? Because write becomes a big problem, right? If you're writing in Iceberg or Hudi or Delta, how
huge
is
pain
it?
point.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't know. Like they should be able to do both. Like in a way, it's so the catalog is not actually the one writing. It's just keeping metadata, right? It shouldn't be writing. The engines themselves are doing the writing right now, as we see right now. Maybe things will change. I don't know. So that means if your engine is really good with writing Iceberg, and as long as the metastore supports that, then it should be perfectly fine to do that. So I think it's more about like the engine's problem right now and not the catalog problem. And Databricks needs to fix like writing Iceberg and reading Iceberg and just supporting Iceberg all together in their Unity catalog, which is another thing.
Snowflake and Polaris really like also did a very poor job around this. It's really lame.
Just,
like
they did.
The read write problem is like far from being solved, and it's
they tried to be open and created this thing where you can create external tables, but then if you want to write, you have to do it with their internal catalog. Now Polaris, I think, is going to fix it, but it's interoperability sounds amazing. It's a dream. It's not there yet, and you have to use Glue and Hive. So back to your original question. Yes.
So, writing is actually very complicated because they are so different. And then if an engine were to write in every table format, there goes your latency. Now, because to be consistent, you have to make sure it's written in all the formats. So I think
you don't have to write the table in multiple formats. You have to write it in one format. You just have
Correct.
the engine ability to read it from the multiple
yes,
formats.
so that's read compatibility. Yeah.
So writing. Oh, you're saying writing to the same table with
Yes.
multiple formats. I don't think that we need that. Like, I don't think that's something
Right.
that people need or want.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, these are
Sounds
complicated. Like the complications are there. Like I had this dilemma where I was working with Databricks and I had like all my lakehouse was built on Delta Lake, and then I wanted to use Flink to materialize CDC data, but then it's like supported out of the box Iceberg, and I said I'm going to write like Iceberg format tables, and I'm using Delta like everywhere else, and I'm supposed to write. So
it's a mess.
But this has to go away in the next few months. This is a boring problem. Ryan Blue said it himself like a long time ago. This is boring. Like this is something not boring. Like, I love this. This is our work, right?
Yeah.
But for people working with data, they should not mess with this. This is something that has to be part of the past.
Yeah. So one of the things that we haven't touched upon as yet, and I'm so glad you mentioned Flink, and that is this whole concept of multi-engine. When it comes to doing compute, you can bring an engine of your choice. So it could be Flink, For some use case, it could be Spark, which is dominant. It could be Presto or Trino or SQL. How are you seeing that? Is this space getting, is it good that you have so many, or is it adding to more confusion and complexity?
So you want to start, or should I?
No, I think it's yes to both of your
Yes,
questions.
and we can move on. But no, I think. By the way, I'm a
all the new engines.
I love it. I think this is amazing. Like this, we've seen so many new engines come out in the last couple of years, and
Yeah,
more recently more and
DuckDB.
more. DuckDB is an amazing example,
Yeah.
and they are, in some ways it's really interesting because some of them are really comparable. So they're like doing kind of the same thing, either at a different price point, using some, so like we've done some work internally for supporting some of our features, and we've done this matrix of like what each of them supports, and it's really complicated. Like, so they're not comparable in ways, but comparable in some of their like performance or like the way that they access data or write data. But some of them are really kind of like interesting. I think DuckDB was like one of the most interesting one that kind of, and probably is going to be adopted by those big names as well, because it's a really good technology. It's kind of like, it's embedded, it's simple, it's really fast.
Cheap.
It's really, really cheap. Like MotherDuck is basing their entire like company around this and doing a really good job. But again, I think that the ability to make a choice and saying like, I need to do some data processing that's really, really intensive, and I don't want to pay a lot of money for it. And I'm okay with doing some work or using some external engine to do that. And now I have the choice because it's the same data, they all support the same data, is amazing. So that gives you kind of like the choice between like going full in with this like super closed source solution that's doing an amazing job and super easy for everyone, with the open source ones with like cheaper versions of like that are like closed source as well. And I think this is interesting, and we see a lot of different use cases for that. We talked to a company, I think, a while ago that have done an amazing work with like creating this fleet of thousands of DuckDBs running on Lambdas because they wanted to process like huge amounts of files. Like doing that with Spark was going to be really slow and be really, really expensive. Doing it with Databricks and Snowflake is out of the questions. It's going to be like, it's going to break the bank for them. So having those abilities is really interesting and amazing in my opinion. So.
Yeah, I also think that it really depends on how your like data platform, in terms of like people working and maintaining this data platform. How does this look like for you? Like how many people do you have to actually manage and being able to like cope and innovate and integrate new engines, because the opportunities are out there, and basically once you're open to use other engines, there are many more options for you to solve different problems and challenges. But I think that what's actually nice is that we've come to a time that you can create a beautiful data platform without having all of this. So I think, again, there's no like right answer. If you have a large organization for data engineers who are like well equipped and they know how to do their way like around open source and how to utilize and get into new technologies, then like the sky's the limit now. You can do everything, and you can do everything for much cheaper. Like that's also very exciting. And
that's what you need.
and performances and actually I think that what's also very nice is like when even before Liran and I started to work on this new venture, then we start to talk a lot and talking about Flink, about how Spark is basically slow.
Yeah, it's kind of like, feels like legacy in a way.
Yeah, it's heavy and this cluster, and it takes so much time, and the processing, and specifically I remember like eagerly like I really hated structured streaming because it was not really streaming. I know it's gotten much better. I haven't like tested it for a while now, but there are many other possibilities out there and a lot of like lightweight engines out there. And I think that, yes, like people who are open to innovation, they should check out like what's happening out there, because there's a lot of innovation going on.
I mean, no, I just want to say, even the UC Berkeley lab from where Spark came out moved on to Ray and Dask. And then Facebook had Presto, which then led to Trino. And now there is a C++ version, which is called Velox. So do you use all of these? Like, do you get to try a bunch of these different?
So we just because we can. We tested a lot of those.
That's why he started a company of his own, so he can do all this, because no one
yeah.
would pay him
No-
to do this
no one-
otherwise.
no one cares. We've tested a lot of these technologies, both Data Fusion and Apache, like Comment, which
Yes.
is another interesting project that came out of Apple, which is kind of like another version of Velox in a way.
Yeah.
And in the end, they're all really amazing in very specific.
Polaris, we haven't talked about
Polaris as well. Yeah, these are all really interesting projects that are doing amazing things for very specific like use cases. They're not this general kind of like solve it all, kind of like something like Databricks or Snowflake. They can do some things. They don't have full SQL support, some of them. They don't support all these file formats, writing and reading. It's kind of like you feel like you're getting, so if you need something very specific and you can use that, for sure. But they're not still, like, they're still not full-fledged products that you can just replace all of your data warehouses and data lake compute engines with them. But like they're improving all the time. These are really active communities and doing amazing but I want to add to that one of the fields that I see that is really interesting and still kind of like not solved yet is real-time kind of data access, so on top of data lake. So using Lakehouse for production analytics. So these are like domains that have been like historically dominated by something like Druid. And now
ClickHouse, Pinot.
Yeah, and now we see some projects that are trying to say, well, we can do that with a data lake. And by the way, Databricks serverless can do that as well. Snowflake now can do that as well with Iceberg. But we see projects like Starrocks, even ClickHouse is doing like support with Iceberg. And they're doing like tiered storage right now at the moment. But like we can see, so this field is something that's still, we're really looking forward to see the product that's kind of like making that production. So people don't have to create like databases for their analytics products for their customers. We've been doing that for a while with Snowflake and some of like clusters that we created by ourselves. But like we love to see technologies that do that, and I think it's a really interesting field to look out for.
But it's also it also depends on engine is part of the story, that the other part is the actual storage, and we also see innovation from the storage side. So we have S3 with S3 Express, like a one zone.
I was just going to
like,
say,
but that's so expensive.
It's expensive. But they're going to improve that, and you have all these new indexes inside Iceberg. That's going to be really like, so you can do sorting, you can do now statistic calculation. These really help, like kind of like, so now you can actually do needle in a haystack really fast on a data lake, which is amazing. And you have all these new projects like SlateDB. They do key value on top of the data lake, like really fast. So something like, think about Redis on top of your data lake.
It makes so much sense not to having to replicate data again and again outside your single source of truth.
Yeah. Redis or Valkey? Have you looked at Valkey?
Valkey?
Yeah,
No.
Apache Valkey. It's an open source fork of Redis because since Redis 7.2 changed its licensing, so Valkey is now the open source.
It's a good day to talk about open source licenses because Elasticsearch just returned to have AGPL on their license today.
Today? They've gone.
Yes,
they've
today.
gone
Everyone is talking about, you only started your day, Sanjeev, but in Israel, everyone is talking about this.
Yeah, they're back to AGPL.
No
they're really
way.
excited. Yeah, they feel like enough time has passed, and OpenSearch and Elasticsearch are two completely different projects.
Right.
They don't really need it anymore.
Too much time has passed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Too late.
So maybe the same will be with Redis.
So that is phenomenal that we are reverting back because Redis caused a lot of angst in the market when they changed the licensing and they said no more open source. So that's why within 1 week, Valkey, which is actually it's a great, one of the best names I've seen because it's actually opposite of KeyVal.
No, you're talking about it, and the only thing I can think about, what an amazing name! Oh my God, it's so good. It sounds like a pet, but it's technology.
I know, but I think this is one of the perfect names. So
good.
So interesting to see. Object stores are phenomenal, highly durable, very cheap, but performance was always an issue. So now you're saying with S3 Express and what Google Cloud Storage has done, so we see performance.
Yeah, but it's part storage, part file formats, meta stores, and catalogs are doing amazing.
Right, it's
all together, and then the engines themselves. And we've seen now like project like LansDB that are doing like vector searches around on data lakes. and I talked about the Slate DB before. So like, there's so many things. Oh, there's another one called
Geospatial.
Wearabots, which is
Yeah.
also they're doing like they created their own Iceberg fork to
Yes.
support
So
that as well.
cool.
It's really really cool.
There's
There's
also
QuickWit as well. I think
yeah.
they're doing
Yeah.
doing also I think like a full text search, like something like Elasticsearch on S3, which is very
I
popular.
know Chaos DB has been doing Chaos Search has been doing that for some time. There's a new experimental thing, Slate DB, which is
Yeah,
an
that's what it's.
LSM on object
People are
store.
loving this name dropping.
Yes.
People love this.
And by the way, I think another thing that really kind of like kicked off that innovation is by the way Data Fusion, which is it's a project I've been following for many years now.
Oh, really?
Talking about
And recently actually tried it and using it. It's a baseline and people can now create on top of it like new databases, so they can use that as like their first stepping stone. It creates a lot, it like hides a lot of the abstractions. It really helps, and we've seen like so InfluxDB created their new database on top of Red Data Fusion. There's Databand, which is like a Data Fusion based new like query engine, and there's so many other products. Maybe even Slate is based on that. I'm not sure, but it's kind of interesting, and that's also like just lowering the bar of how easy it is to create a new database is also like something that's going to be really helping innovate.
So the question then I have is, in your mind, what is still missing in these file formats? What remains unsolved?
So, yeah, I think, as I said before, is real-time analytics is something that's still kind of like is big and missing. I think again we're missing a lot of those features, kind of like feature parity for different engines. So, like you have like Iceberg statistics. Only Trino I think supports that feature right now. So you have all these amazing features coming out of the file formats, but engines are not supporting them. So I think we need a new abstraction layer. And by the way, we talked I think with Jordan Tigany from MotherDuck, and he was talking about having DuckDB be that layer. Like, so other engines don't have to think about how do I optimize my reading of Iceberg or Delta Lake. Maybe the Polaris and Unity are going to do that for the engines. We don't know yet, but I think that's something that's still missing is like, there's still a lot of time passes from when like the open table formats creates a feature and then until it goes to all the engines. So there's still something that's not working well there. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, sorry, Doron, I want to hear your point of view too. I just want to say that there has been such a massive rush to adopt Iceberg as a standard that sometimes I felt Iceberg may not have been the right choice because Iceberg was never really built for streaming ingest. And so if each row in CDC becomes a Parquet file, and now you have a million Parquet files, but you lose the benefit of a Parquet file if you don't have that columnar structure. One row is a Parquet file. So Hudi was actually built for that. But now I'm starting to see in Trino, for instance, they build their own streaming ingest. So is that something that you've seen where people are just adopting these open table formats, but it may not be the right format for that use case?
Yeah.
Workload.
I think, by the way, to your question specifically around Hudi and Iceberg, it's a great question, right? So yeah, they've been doing like merge on read from day one. With Avro files, kind of like ingesting like the new kind of rows, and then you have them like compacted into Parquet files, which sounds amazing in theory. But Hudi didn't work for a lot of time. It was so complicated. It was so buggy. And Iceberg just like works for a lot of companies.
Yeah.
It's production proven. It's probably Hudi as well right now at this point, but we're also hearing stories that it's not. But so what matters is stability. What matters is performance. And I think, yes, streaming is probably not the use case that Iceberg was planned for, but it is working for streaming use cases. Like we've seen Absolver like doing utilizing Iceberg as well and moving that from
also
like
Confluent.
and Confluent as well.
I think that like unfortunately it's not only a game of like a feature and which open table format is actually the best. We have also Apache Paimon. I never had to like compare. No one talks about it.
Yeah.
But I think it's also basically a popularity game. A lot of people liked how Iceberg like became like the open source like first, like although Hudi was like the open source open table format. That's why we started
Right.
working with Hudi. But yeah, it was too complicated. I think it had like 20,000 configurations
Yeah.
you could play with, and it was a
Right.
nightmare. I remember reading a blog post from who's the owner of like who created
Vinod.
Hudi was
Vinod?
Yeah, from Uber.
Uber,
Vinod?
Uber. So we read this Medium post by Uber engineers telling like how they are managing like those hundreds or thousands of CDC pipelines using Hudi, and then I realized, yeah, they have like I don't know 300 people working
Yeah.
on this. It makes sense. I can't manage this with my 4 people in my data infra team.
Yeah.
So that's when I gave up on Hudi. But basically, yeah, I think it's a popularity game, and definitely Iceberg won this game. I think that Delta is an amazing open table format. It's so easy to use, and I think it's like less. Like you don't need to play with as many knobs as other open table formats, but it's just less cool, I guess.
Exactly. I think that's the only reason it's less.
And again,
cool.
yeah, Confluent chose this for like, cause like Iceberg for their streaming solution,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
and it's
Table
working. It's
flow.
It's
not
working.
perfect.
I think for like customers doing it right now, it works, and you can just go ahead and use it.
Right.
And I think they're just going to improve it. So I kind of like, I think Iceberg community is
Right.
really, really a good community. They're going to always improve. And maybe Apache Paimon will be merged into Iceberg. I don't know. So,
But that's the interesting part where once you have like an open source and it becomes like the popular choice, but when it's popular, you have a huge community supporting it, and that's making it the best option because of the community. So it actually like gives comes back to the actual like right choice eventually.
I think by the way, probably the next big thing that's going to happen around that area. What?
What is it?
Yes, we were going to come to trends. What are the
I
trends?
think the actual you talked about this before, right? I think the actual underlying file format is going to need to change. Like Parquet is pretty old, and it's and I've seen there's
already seen new.
Yeah, there are new, like Facebook. I think had like a year ago they open sourced their like new kind of file format. I don't remember its name because no one uses it, but. I think we're gonna see that changes. I think like Parquet is just like something that is really good for really specific use cases, and some that it's really not. And having to switch between Avro and Parquet for like when you want a row based or column based, it's like it doesn't make sense.
I think that one of the problems like working in this open data lake ecosystem is that you have so many things you can optimize and like optimize for, and whether it's which files you're using, which file formats you're using, which compaction method you're using, and which open table format you're using, which engine you're using, and there are so many options for this. I think that like eventually a lot of this is going to have to go away and be someone else's problem, whether it's the catalog or something else, because it's not manageable for anyone. It's not scalable in any way.
You know, at Databricks Summit, we met up with Nong Lee. So, and Nong is now at Databricks. But when he was at Cloudera, he and Julian Ledem created Parquet. And so he was telling us that there's a new refreshed, new version of Parquet that's imminent. It's imminent. And we don't know when, but there will be a better version of Parquet coming out soon.
Yeah.
Very exciting, and it should all be seamless, so we wouldn't have to care about it.
But I want to answer to your questions, like, and we've been talking to so many organizations. So some organization will be just like as Doron just said, like, leave me alone. I just want to write fast, have it cheap, and just use my data to create like business value. But some of them are just they want to play with these things. They're really interested in technologies. They want to, and I think now they can do anything. As Doron said, there's so many optimization options and the ability to test all these different projects and use them from different use cases and creating these abstractions and working with technologies really like excites people. So having everything abstracted away is great for like maybe the business, but I don't think engineers are going to love that. So so I think it's going to be a balance all the time. I hope. I mean.
Yeah, it's a good tension.
Yeah, right.
But I think that all of like allowing all these changes really goes back to the governance problem, because when you make all these changes, you need to create these abstractions to allow the business to keep working and then pushing it forward, bring in more innovation into the platform, but not stopping anyone from actually delivering and building like more and creating business results on top of what you're working on.
Yeah, I think right now we're at the state where you can have either absolute freedom to do whatever you want,
Yeah.
and create whatever data you want, and do it with each format, like whatever. Like there's so much freedom out there, so you can really democratize data. Or you can really have it closed, so kind of like have people like using something like a data warehouse where they can. There's very specific ways they can do things. I think the level of control is going to have to change because people are looking for like that freedom. But that freedom really has a cost, and we've seen companies telling like, "Well, our data cost is insane. Like, we don't really know how to solve this. Like, there's so many things, and once it gets out of control, it's really really hard to bring it back into control. So there's like all these data quality projects and like role based access, but we don't see a lot of like products that really help teams gain control while keeping like the democracy happy. So this is, I think, a field that's going to be really interesting to look out for.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So it's so interesting. You mentioned Confluent is now writing all this data to Iceberg. Fivetran, which was just doing chain data capture, is now writing to Iceberg. Even Salesforce Cloud, which used to write into Snowflake, and then in Snowflake you would do all this stuff and then do reverse ETL. Now they're supporting Iceberg. So this whole data landscape is changing very rapidly, and with the center of gravity being Lakehouse with this metadata catalog on top. So how we do things another year, and by the way, I think this is the first episode we've gone over 50 minutes without even mentioning AI.
Yay!
Yay!
Yay.
That's our goal in life.
No, it goes without saying. Like,
Yes.
of course, we do all of this with
With
AI.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
The power
it's
of
just there. It's
AI.
just there. It helps us.
It's all AI
Yeah, it's-
generated.
Yeah. So we are almost reaching end of our time. I usually like to ask, I don't want to put you guys on spot, but what is one secret superpower of fun stuff that you do that the world doesn't know? Like when you're not doing data, what's is your passion excites you?
I can go back to like before I had a startup and had my third kid. I was doing improv theater. I don't know if that like that counts.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
counts 100%.
Yeah, I loved it. I really want to go back, but now I have a startup, and I don't think Doron is not gonna be happy about that.
No,
so.
we can't.
See,
We
I
don't
was
have
right
to.
when I said they're also funny. See, I didn't even know this part. It's natural.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. It was. I really. I wanna go back to that. We'll talk about it after the podcast.
No, you can't. You can't. I'm really good with plants. I don't
Oh,
know.
she's really good at
I'm a
plants.
plant lover. So if anyone
Ah.
wants any advice with your plant, just like
Yeah, she's
DM me with
obsessed. She's
pictures,
obsessed.
and yeah, I'll tell you why you're a bad plant person, and I'm better than you. So that's how I grow my plants.
Amazing. Well, great. This has been such a fun episode, very informative, very educational. I really want to thank you for taking this time late in your day, and would love to do it again at some point when you guys come out of stealth.
Yeah,
Yes, we
we
will.
should. And I'm so happy this actually happened. I was looking forward for this a long time. Thanks, Sanjeev.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
Andrew.
you, everyone. Until next time, thanks for joining us. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.